You're either in or you're out. Right now.
Today, most people are familiar with the concept of clever criminals. This theme has been widely used through all aspects of the media. Mysterious, non-violent crimes still put the audiences on the edge of their seats. But something like this actually happened. The Brink's robbery was one of the most famous robberies of its time.
January 17th, 1950, right about where we're sitting right now. And this was considered it was the largest armed robbery in U.S. history at the time. And it occupies a special place in Boston history because many people ended up cheering for the robbers in this case. So what happened? Well, if you can picture this, the night of January 17th, 1950, the Brink's company, which is the armored truck company, is still in existence today, was used as a headquarters, and it was a place that they brought the money because the Brink's was in charge of distributing a whole lot of money all throughout Boston. So on that night, just about 7 o'clock, a group of robbers, just about 7 people, suddenly appeared inside the Brink's headquarters, which was amazing to the guards and the messengers in there because they considered it one of the most secure places to store money in Boston. But all of a sudden they were confronted by 7 masked men who were wearing huge masks, chauffeurs' caps, navy peacoats, and who demanded that they give them the money. They did, and it was a mad scramble of scooping up as much money as they could, and they took off. And the final total was about $1.5 million, which in 1950 was about $23 million today. Describe when you were first called to the scene of the robbery.
Yeah.
Describe what that was like.
I wish I had gum stuck to the soles of my shoes because there's money all over the floor. When we walked in, so we walked in and had to shuffle through. There's dollar bills and $100 bills and whatnot.
The media in the 1950s grew dramatically, and the people depended on newspapers and the radio for their daily news, becoming heavily influenced by them. The Brink's robbery was escalated to a national phenomenon because of the growth of media and pop culture. It drew the public's attention with eye-catching, sensational stories, labeling it the crime of the century.
At the time that it happened, by early morning, everyone in the North End was aware of the robbery. Now the word spread like wildfire that Brink's had been robbed.
However, in order to maintain the public's interest, the media began to stretch the truth about the heist.
Called me over one day, this was about 3 weeks after the robbery. He said, Eddie, he said, I'm assigning you to the Brink's robbery forever. I want a story on my desk every single day. I don't care if it's a paragraph or 5 pages. He started to make up things too. That's what they say, play loose with the facts. Mm-hmm. You know, you lied a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was my assignment.
Mm-hmm. So, did you say that you may have like exaggerated some of the things from the Brink's robbery?
I just told you that.
Yeah.
Yes, I made up stuff. I had to.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So
I wrote a story that came right out of here.
Mm-hmm.
How the key was made, who made it. I had no idea how the hell they got in here. But it was picked up by the AP and went nationwide. I was a cub reporter. I mean, I was about as low as you could get. I can say that the Brink's robbery gave me a boost to my career. Yeah, because I learned an awful lot. I learned how to lie. I learned how to make up stories. Oh, it was beautiful.
The objective of your story is to be read. You don't want to write something that nobody reads. It has to be good enough that it attracts attention. I think it was much looser in the 1950s. It was more in the area of entertainment. There was some notion that it was understood that exaggeration was a part of newspapering. in the 50s.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North America and all the ships at sea. Let's go to press. Flash, Boston. The final figures are now in on the spectacular Brink's robbery. Over $2 million taken by gunmen in a commando-style raid, making it the crime of the century. My sources in the FBI report evidence indicating an inside job, with possible links to organized crime and communist subversives.
The growth of the media was also caused by the Cold War propaganda on the American home front.
In the background was the growing struggle between two great powers to shape the post-war world. Soviet Russia was expansively stabbing westward, knifing into nations left empty by war. On orders from the Kremlin, Russia had launched one of history's most drastic political, moral, and economic wars, a Cold War. The United States was obliged to help Europe safeguard its traditional freedoms and the independence of its nations.
The Cold War rhetoric influenced the minds of Americans, sparking their imaginations about conspiracy theories and linking them to the Brink's robbery.
At the times, the Cold War, the fear about communism really had an impact. There is some speculation that J. Edgar Hoover himself, the former director, was convinced it was communist agents that were involved.
Throughout years of investigation, the public continued to remain hooked onto the case because of the media's constant supply of news.
Enforcement agencies, the FBI begins the largest criminal roundup in history. In an effort to find the men responsible for the spectacular Brink's holdup, no stone will be left unturned as G-men trace leads to known criminals and subversives.
They weren't caught for the next 5 years. Then finally, one of the robbers ratted out the others, and they were able to convict all of the robbers that were living at that time, and the crime finally came to an end.
2 weeks before the statute of limitation would end. 2 weeks. And they could have gone out and said, we robbed the bank. You can't do anything about it.
As the public showed more and more interest in the robbery, movie producers took advantage of the suspense and began basing films on the heist.
All right, now get over there and open that gate.
One in particular, The Brink's Job, made in 1978, was a national hit and brought the story of the Brink's robbery to another generation of Americans.
At one point, the robbers, the filmmakers, and a number of people went over to Harvard to give a talk. And when they walked in, the robbers got a standing ovation from the Harvard students. So I think this was a reflection not only of the crime, but of the 1970s. This was in the 1970s. And I think at that time, there was still some resonance from many of the social changes of the 1960s. So I think people considered outlaws, people outside normal society, to be kind of heroic. And you can think of many examples in the movies at that time, and I think the Brink's Robbers was part of that. The Brink's Job, that movie, was part of that whole tradition.
Side this, Tony, please! You're the greatest! Remember me!
Movies in the 21st century still show similarities to the Brink's robbery, such as Ocean's 11, made in 2001.
Or better yet, a pinch is a bomb. It unleashes an electromagnetic pulse which shuts down any power source within its blast radius. Now that tends not to matter.
You see the movie The Town, starring Ben Affleck, you'll see a direct correlation between the way the Brink's robbery was done and the way the robbers in that movie conducted their crimes.
Through media, the heist was taken in by the public as factual news and fictional entertainment, creating the image of the smart and classy thief. It allowed the Brink's robbery to become the Great Brink's Robbery and gave it a place in history as the crime of the century.
That's another thing, don't you? Drink. You're going to college eventually. Don't get fouled up. Where was I?